She booked our dream venue out from under us, my future mother-in-law's war against our wedding. Okay. I have to write this down because if I don't, I'm going to combust. I'm going to walk into the nearest forest, sit down among the pine needles, and simply cease to exist. I posted here a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of you were incredibly kind, incredibly validating, and some of you even asked for an update. So here it is. It is not the wholesome update I hope to deliver. It is, in fact, a disaster wrapped in a wedding veil soaked in drama. Buckle up. A little background for those who missed it. For those of you who didn't catch my original post, let me set the scene. My name isn't important. What is important is that I am a 31-year-old woman who has spent most of her adult life stubbornly, happily avoiding dresses, large crowds, and any event that requires me to smile at strangers for more than 45 consecutive minutes. I am, by every clinical and casual definition of the word, an introvert. So is my fiancé, Marcus. We are two quietly happy peas in a very small, very cozy pod. We met 4 years ago at a speed dating event. Yes, speed dating. Yes, it was as chaotic and awkward as it sounds. And yes, somehow, miraculously, it worked. The restaurant hosting the event was this warm, noisy, wonderful Italian place downtown. The kind of place where the lighting is perpetually golden, the pasta is handmade, and the waiters have been working there so long they feel like furniture. Marcus leaned across a sticky little table and said something that made me laugh so hard I knocked over my water glass, and that was it. 4 years later, he asked me to marry him in that same restaurant, at that same table they'd saved for us, with a little electric candle flickering between us, because the real one was a fire hazard. So naturally, when we started planning our wedding, our very first, very non-negotiable dream was to host our reception there. Their private function room holds about 50 people. We wanted 50 people. It was perfect. It was us. A small, intimate gathering of the people who had actually shown up in our lives. Not childhood neighbors we haven't spoken to in 2 decades, not distant cousins who would need name tags to identify us at a funeral, but genuinely, actually, deeply loved people. 50 of them. That was the plan. Enter Patricia. Patricia is Marcus's mother. She is a 58-year-old woman who has, by her own admission, always dreamed of the daughter she never had. She has 2 sons. Marcus is the younger one, and when he told her we were engaged, she apparently burst into tears, grabbed his face, and said, Finally I get to plan a wedding." Marcus thought she was being sweet and dramatic. He told me this story with a fond smile. I smiled back. Inside, a very small, very tired alarm bell began to ring. The $25,000 question. About 2 months after our engagement, Patricia called Marcus to tell him she wanted to give us a wedding gift of $25,000. $25,000. I want to be clear, that is a life-changing amount of money for us. We are not wealthy people. We were prepared to fund this wedding ourselves and keep it modest. So when he told me, my first reaction was genuine, tearful gratitude. My second reaction, about 48 hours later, was dread. Because here's the thing about Patricia. She is not a malicious person, not in her heart. But she is a woman who has spent her entire adult life organizing, orchestrating, and steering every situation she finds herself in. Her home is immaculate in a way that feels slightly aggressive. Her Christmas dinners run on a schedule she distributes 2 weeks in advance. She once suggested that Marcus's older brother, Derek, serve a specific appetizer at his housewarming party, and somehow that suggestion became a 4-hour conversation about whether Derek's lack of prosciutto was a sign of deeper personal failures. In other words, Patricia does not give gifts without strings. Patricia has never given a gift without strings. The strings are sometimes invisible and sometimes they're rope thick and bright red, but they are always, always there. And so when the check arrived, I didn't deposit it. I put it in a drawer. I posted my original question here. Am I the asshole for being suspicious? Am I overreacting? Is it wrong to be hesitant about a generous gift just because I have a feeling there's a catch? You all said, overwhelmingly, that I was not the asshole. You said trust the gut. You said talk to her. You said set the terms before you deposit a single cent. So I did. Marcus, and I sat down with Patricia at her kitchen table, which she had set with coffee and those little almond biscotti she makes from scratch, and I remember thinking she baked for this. She knew this was coming, and she baked. That is either disarming or calculated, and I genuinely could not tell which. I led the conversation. I told her I missed the version of our relationship we'd had before the engagement. Lighter, warmer, easier. I told her I felt that relationship had become strained because some of our wedding decisions hadn't been respected. I was careful. I was kind. I was specific. I laid out our 3 non-negotiables. First, the guest list. 50 people, maximum. People who are actively, meaningfully present in our lives. We are introverts. We will be emotionally spent by the ceremony alone. A reception with 200 people would not be a celebration for us. It would be a performance, and we would spend the entire thing managing other people's feelings instead of actually experiencing our own wedding. I said this clearly, without apology. Second, my wedding gown. This is the first time in my adult life I will be wearing a dress. Prom was the last time, and I spent the whole night feeling like I was wearing someone else's skin. My gown will be chosen by me, for me, to make me feel beautiful and comfortable and like myself. Not anyone else's vision of what a bride should look like. Third, the venue. I told her about the restaurant. I told her the whole story, the speed dating, the spilled water, the proposal, the table they saved for us. I watched something flicker across her face when I told her that story, something soft and almost moved, and I thought, she understands. She gets it. We told her we hadn't deposited the check, and we wouldn't until we had this conversation and came to a genuine understanding. We told her we were grateful, deeply grateful, but the gift came with conditions, or it didn't come at all. And then Patricia cried. She cried and told us she was sorry. She said she just wanted everything to be perfect. She said she had always dreamed of being involved in planning a wedding for a daughter, and she was scared, genuinely scared, that I would shut her out entirely, that she'd show up on the day and not have been part of any of it. I want to be honest here. I felt for her. In that moment, I actually felt for her, because I had never intended to shut her out. I wanted her there. I wanted her to feel included and loved, and like she was part of this. I just needed her to respect that our wedding was our wedding. We hugged. We all agreed. We deposited the check. I should have known. I should have known. Phase 2. The wedding planner. 2 weeks after that conversation, we lost the restaurant. I called to book the private function room and was told it had already been reserved for our date. My stomach dropped. I asked if there had been some mistake. The woman on the phone was apologetic, but firm. Someone had placed a deposit. The date was gone. I cried. I'm not ashamed to say it. That venue was sewn into the fabric of our love story. Losing it felt like losing something I couldn't name. Marcus held me and said we'd find somewhere else. Somewhere still small, still intimate, still ours. And I believed him. I took a breath and I moved on. 3 days later, I got a call from a woman named Stephanie. Stephanie introduced herself as a wedding planner. I said, I'm sorry, a what? She said she'd been hired to help coordinate our wedding and wanted to schedule an initial consultation. I asked who had hired her. She said, cheerfully and without hesitation, Patricia, your future mother-in-law. She said you'd lost your venue and wanted to take a little pressure off your plate. I hung up and sat very still for about 30 seconds. Then I called Marcus. He called Patricia. Patricia explained, in her most reasonable and loving tone, that Marcus had mentioned we'd lost the restaurant venue, and she had simply wanted to help. That Stephanie was purely administrative, a background logistics person, someone to handle the boring paperwork so that I could focus on enjoying the experience. I want to be fair. I want to be generous, because I genuinely tried in that moment to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was a kind impulse, clumsily executed. Maybe she heard about the restaurant and felt guilty, and this was her way of making it right. Maybe I was being paranoid. So I agreed to meet with Stephanie. I met with her twice. I described our vision in detail. Intimate, personal, meaningful, small. 50 guests, warm atmosphere, A space that felt like a place people actually gathered to celebrate rather than a venue people rented to impress. Stephanie nodded, took notes, and told me she'd put together a short list of venues for us to tour. She was lovely, honestly. Professional, attentive, clearly good at her job. Which is why what happened next made it so much worse. The list. Stephanie emailed the venue list. I clicked the first link. My brain didn't immediately register what I was seeing, so I clicked the second. Then the third. Then I sat back in my chair and felt something cold move through me like a tide going out. Every venue on that list was enormous. We're not talking a little bigger than we planned. We're talking grand ballrooms. We're talking tiered chandeliers and listed capacity of 200, 250, 300 guests. We're talking venues where you book a wing, not a room. I showed Marcus. He thought it was a mistake. An oversight. Maybe Stephanie had misheard us, or maybe the system she used defaulted to large spaces, or maybe there was some innocent explanation we weren't seeing. So, we went to the first appointment. We walked into this venue, a converted estate with vaulted ceilings and a marble foyer, and the events coordinator greeted us with a glossy brochure. Marcus, trying to lighten the mood, laughed and said that 50 people were going to rattle around in their spare change. He said it as a joke. Stephanie didn't laugh. She looked confused. And then she looked careful, the way someone looks when they realize they've been caught between two conflicting stories. I asked her what was wrong. She hesitated. Then she said that Patricia had contacted her last week to let her know we were reconsidering the guest list, that we were thinking of expanding the wedding and would need venues suitable for a larger event. She said this gently, apologetically, like she already understood. She was delivering a grenade. Marcus and I drove home in silence. When we got home, I called my mom. I am 31 years old, and I called my mother and cried into the phone for 20 minutes. I told her everything. I told her we were exhausted and humiliated, and that I was seriously, genuinely considering eloping to a courthouse in another city and sending everyone a postcard. My mom listened. She is a quiet woman, but she is sharp, the kind of sharp that comes from a lifetime of watching people and filing things away. When I finished talking, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Let me make a call." She called the restaurant. The original restaurant, our restaurant, the one that had told us the private function room, was booked. She told them she was calling to confirm a booking for her sister. She gave the date. She gave Patricia's name. There was a pause on the other end of the line. And then the person confirmed it. Yes, that name. Yes, that date. Yes, the deposit had been paid. My mom called me back and told me what she'd found out. I remember the exact feeling of hearing it. It was like the floor had dissolved under my feet. Not a sudden collapse, but a slow, certain, awful give. The kind of feeling where you realize that something you suspected but refused to fully believe is, in fact, completely true. Patricia had booked the venue herself, paid a deposit on it, secured the date specifically so that we couldn't have it. She had taken our most meaningful, most personal, most emotionally significant wedding venue, and she had locked us out of it deliberately. Not because she wanted it for herself, not because she needed it for some other reason, but because she wanted us to have nowhere to go except somewhere bigger. Somewhere that could hold 200 guests. Somewhere that could accommodate the wedding she wanted us to have. The reckoning. Marcus called her. I was in the room. I heard his voice go quiet and controlled in a way I had never heard before, and I've known this man for 4 years. There is a specific register that people reach when they are not shouting, because shouting would be insufficient. When they are being measured and precise, because the alternative is something they can't come back from. He told her he knew what she had done. He didn't ask. He told her. He told her she was no longer involved in any aspect of the wedding planning. That the wedding planner was dismissed. That every vendor we contacted from this point forward would be password protected so that she could not interfere, cancel, alter, or sabotage anything. He told her she was lucky, that she was still invited to the wedding at all, but she would be attending as a guest. Only a guest. No speech. No mother-son dance. No role of any kind in the ceremony or reception. And then he told her that if she interfered again, in any way, through any channel, by any method, She would not be allowed to attend at all. She cried. Of course she cried. She apologized. Of course she apologized. But here's the thing I have learned about people like Patricia, the thing I wish someone had told me at the very start of this whole ordeal. The apology and the behavior are not connected to each other. She is capable of crying and apologizing and meaning both of those things fully and completely, while also being entirely, structurally unable to stop doing the thing she is apologizing for. Because it isn't malice, not exactly. It is compulsion. It is a woman who cannot experience a situation she doesn't control and simply decides to control it, and then feels bad afterward, and then does it again. I do not hate Patricia.
I want to be honest about that.
I don't think she is a villain. I think she is a person who loves her son in a way that has never fully learned to look like respect. I think she pictured this wedding for years before Marcus even met me, and when a real wedding with a real woman with real, specific opinions arrived, she didn't know how to let go of the version in her head. But understanding someone does not mean tolerating their behavior. And her behavior had reached a point I could no longer tolerate. What happened with the money? We transferred the $25,000 back to her account. I want to sit with that for a moment because I think it deserves acknowledgement. That was not easy. That was not a small thing. That was money that would have changed the shape of our wedding, money that represented, on paper, an act of generosity from someone who loves us. But it was never ours. Not really. Money that comes with the expectation of control isn't a gift. It's a leash with a bow on it. And we have spent enough of this engagement learning that lesson. We sent it back without drama, without a long letter, without any attempt to explain or justify. We just sent it back. I am no contact with Patricia. That is not a decision I made emotionally, in the heat of the moment. It is a considered, deliberate, quiet decision. I am going to be polite to her at the wedding. I am going to smile, and I am going to be civil because it is our wedding, and I refuse to let conflict live on that day. I will not be rude. I will not cause a scene. But after that day, I'm done. I have nothing more to give to this relationship. Marcus is devastated about his mother. I want to be clear about that, too. He loves her. He grew up with her, and she is not entirely the story. There are years of warmth and dinners, and the kind of ordinary love that doesn't make for dramatic Reddit posts. He is not indifferent to this. He has cried about it, privately, where he thinks I can't hear. It breaks my heart for him, but he has been, without question or hesitation, completely on my side. He has not asked me to give her another chance. He has not minimized what she did or asked me to see it from her perspective or suggested that maybe, in some way, we overreacted. He looked at what his mother did, and he called it what it was, and he acted accordingly. That is the man I am marrying. That, more than anything, is why I know this is going to be okay. The restaurant. I almost forgot to tell you the part that I keep telling my friends because they need to hear it. After everything came out, after Marcus's call, after the money went back, after Stephanie was let go, and the vendor passwords were changed, my mom made one more call to the restaurant. She explained, as herself this time, what had happened. She told them about the deposit that had been placed under Patricia's name, and that it had been placed without our knowledge specifically to prevent us from booking the space ourselves. She explained that the date in question was the anniversary of the night we met, and the night of our engagement. She told them the whole story. The restaurant manager asked her to hold. He came back 5 minutes later. He said that they were canceling Patricia's reservation and returning her deposit because they had a policy against reservations made in bad faith, and that if we wanted to rebook the private function room for our date, they would hold it for us for 48 hours. We booked it within the hour. Our wedding is in the private function room of the Italian restaurant where Marcus spilled my water glass laughing, where he asked me to marry him, where a waiter who has worked there for 31 years once told us we were the couple who made the most sense of anyone who'd ever come in through those doors. 50 people. Our 50 people. The people who have walked beside us, shown up on bad days and ordinary days, who know our stories and have stories of their own that involve us. It is going to be quiet and warm and ours. Final thoughts. I want to close with something that is less about Patricia and more about the whole arc of this experience, because I think there's something worth naming here. I spent a lot of the early months of this engagement questioning myself. I had a feeling, a persistent, inconvenient, nagging feeling that something was off. And I kept pushing it down because I didn't want to be the difficult one. I didn't want to be the woman who caused problems with the future in-laws before the wedding even happened. I didn't want to look ungrateful or cold or paranoid. And in doing that, I nearly let myself be quietly, incrementally walked over by someone who would have called it love the whole time. The people in the comments of my original post who told me to trust my gut, thank you. I mean that. Not in a performative way. In the way that you thank someone who grabbed your arm before you stepped into traffic. You gave me the push I needed to have a conversation I'd been avoiding, and that conversation, even though it ultimately didn't fix anything, gave me information I needed. Your instincts are not paranoia. Discomfort is information. When someone makes you feel like you're overreacting, ask yourself who benefits from you believing that. Anyway, the wedding is in 4 months. The dress fitting is next week. And no, I'm not telling you what it looks like, but I will say that when I put it on, I stood in front of that mirror for a long time and felt, for the first time in my life, like I understood why people make a fuss about wedding gowns. Marcus cried when I described it to him. I'm not supposed to tell you that, but I am. That's the update. Not the one I hoped to write, but maybe the one that needed to be written. Thanks for listening, internet strangers. You're the best kind of people. Edit. For everyone asking, yes, Patricia's deposit was returned to her by the restaurant. No, we did not keep the $25,000. Yes, the wedding planner Stephanie was completely innocent in all of this, and I hope she finds lovely clients who deserve her. Yes, Marcus is fine. We are fine. We are, despite everything, genuinely, deeply happy. Edit 2. Someone in the comments asked what I'm going to do if Patricia shows up to the wedding and makes a scene. The answer is, I have 2 very large brothers and a seating arrangement that puts her next to Marcus's aunt, who talks exclusively about her dogs and has never, in recorded history, stopped talking long enough for anyone else to get a word in. I call it passive architecture. It's going to be fine. TLDR, future MIL offered $25,000 for our wedding. We had a heart-to-heart with clear conditions. She agreed. We deposited the check. Then she hired a secret wedding planner, told the planner we were expanding the guest list, and physically booked our dream venue herself to prevent us from having it. We sent the money back, went no contact, and the restaurant canceled her reservation and gave us our date back. Our wedding is in 4 months, and it's going to be exactly what we always wanted.